want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
We are the Mad Men of Masculinity. Your home for healthy masculinity. We're just real men having real conversations for you.
Good day, Mad Men Mafia.
I am Kirk M. Samuels.
And I am Jason B. Kendrick.
And we are the Mad Men of Masculinity.
That's right. We're just real men having real conversations for you.
Hey, do us a favor. Hit the like, subscribe. Hit something,
Like and
man.
subscribe.
Hit something down there. Helps us out, man. One of these days, we're going to take some of that Google money. One of these days that, YouTube going to pay us and they got enough money, man. One of these days, man, we're gonna get up there. We're gonna be getting some of that YouTube Google money.
Yeah, help feed you boys, help us keep the lights on and keep the show going because it's hard out in these streets. It's painful.
Comment, subscribe. We want to hear what you guys are thinking, what you guys are talking about. We want to get some dialogue in the comments, man. Holler at your boys, man. Holler at your boys. Man, let's see. So
this is your topic.
JBK, dude, I was watching it's a famous scene out of one of the Rocky movies. He's fighting Clubber Lang. Clubber Lang, Mr. T, and reporter put a little microphone in Clubber Lang's face and said, "What is your prediction for this fight?" Clubber Lang looks over at the camera, pauses, takes a deep breath, and says one word. Pain is universal, man. Pain has got to be something that we all deal with, man. And it just hit me the other day, man. I was like, we haven't talked about some adversity too much here lately, man. I thought it'd be nice to talk about some pain, man. Pain.
So you just talking?
You got any pain? What kind of? But you got to think about, just when, and I thought about this too, when just in the whole idea of pain, there's physical pain, there's emotional pain, spiritual pain, every part of our being that there's some level of pain that can be experienced in that. Relational, like I said, physical, spiritual, mental, all those kinds of things, man. And we deal with all that stuff as men, and maybe to a degree, to the degree that we deal with the pain in our life, maybe that's kind of the bar that is set as to how much we can endure and how much we can push through to the next level or the next day sometimes.
Well, a lot of philosophy, or maybe it's just theory, says that pain makes the man. I know in a lot of training and a lot of different things, you have to go through the pain to build the muscle. You have to go through the pain to build the skill. But yeah, I think it's definitely a part. I mean, it's definitely what is the old Chinese proverb? Pain is life, and suffering is but suffering is optional. So I think something we can all probably, especially as men today, can talk on and on about. But speaking of talking on and on about, do you think we know anybody that's had any background in pain or maybe inflicts pain?
I know somebody. I know somebody that has been through some pain, man. I know somebody very well. We both do, matter of fact, and we were sitting next to him just a couple of days ago, man.
Who's that?
The one and only Master Chris Natzke. You are the only white man I'll call Master.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate that.
And that's because, man, you are a 27th degree black belt. Almost one of these days you'll be there. I think you're up to 9 now, right?
I am.
Nice. And I don't know. I keep saying it. I don't know if it's true or not, but you haven't corrected me that you get the 10th degree when you dead. So you pretty much
I'm going to stay alive as long as I can. As long as I can.
You're pretty close to that mountaintop experience. So I was sitting next to you the other day, Nats, and I just looked over at you and I was like, man, with a face like that, this guy has definitely experienced some pain. This guy, I was like, no, surely, I mean, you don't get to be a 9th degree black belt. You don't get to be like the level that you are in the martial arts world and martial arts community. And to be perfectly clear, you're one of our inner circle guys. I mean, we are crew here, so this is home team. But you don't get to experience or to be at the place where you are without experiencing a lot of different things, and not only just in martial arts, but life. I mean, man, you're a tip of the spear kind of coach for a lot of people in business and all these other kind of things, man. And not only that, a national taekwondo champion. How many times have you been kicked in the face or the head in your life?
Hey, I stopped counting, but yeah,
that's because you can't count.
Hopefully I did more kicking to the head than I did receiving. But yeah, when you're talking about that too, I was thinking about that. It's not only 5 decades plus of martial arts, but I played high school, college football as well. And so definitely opportunities to get rocked and feel some pain, and not only physical pain. I think that sometimes as an athlete in particular, when you get rocked physically and you're not doing well as a result of that, the emotional pain, the embarrassment, the all that comes along with that can probably be worse. So yeah, no, I definitely felt it. And, also parts of my life too, growing up, with in an alcoholic household, father of an alcoholic, had a brother that I lost when I was 17. And as you guys can probably also ascribe to, went through a real painful divorce back about 20 years ago. So yeah, I've been there, I've felt it. And, I think it's something that none of us really want to go through, particularly when we're going through it. But if we're able to get on the other side of it, it can be some of the most impactful growth periods of our lives.
I forgot about the.
No, it's definitely something we talk about quite a bit about, like how pain is inevitable.
Yeah,
getting through it is really the path, and how you deal with it. I think it's a lot to your point. Emotional pain goes right along with physical pain a lot of times, and when we don't deal with it, that's when we get mired in it. That's when it becomes an issue. But when we learn to deal with it, accept it, heal it, move on with it, that's when you build that muscle. But I mean, it sounds like you spent 5 decades building that muscle.
Yeah. Well, and and I think, Jason, you bring up a really good point. From a man's perspective, I think that, and the quote that I was thinking about too, and you already brought it up, the Buddha said, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And as I was thinking about not only in my own life, but also in observing men throughout my life as well, I think that most men suffer as a result of being afraid of or resisting pain. So what ends up happening is the resistance causes more suffering than if they were to go through. It's kind of like, I heard a coach of mine say one time, if you've got a difficult time in your life, you're equating it to, you're going to cut off the tail of a tiger. Okay. Would you rather do it in one big chop and get it done with? Or would you rather do it in little tiny pieces? Right. And inevitably, you want to do in one big chop. But many of us as men, I think there's an inherent fear of that. Right. And I suppose that's maybe a human condition. And so when we're resisting it, we don't want to really lean into it. We don't want to really feel it. In the long term, we end up suffering much, much more, because
but I'm struggling with this though, Nats, because, when I hear you say that, and I guess I don't know about agreeing or disagreeing. I'm having trouble processing the idea, and I feel like you can probably help me with this. Processing the idea of the line between pain and suffering. Is suffering the fact that you haven't accepted the pain that's present in your life? I'm having a hard time separating those two.
100%. That's a great question. I think it's that, and it's also one other thing. I think the resistance causes the long-term suffering. So if you don't want to look at an issue, you've gone through breakup after breakup after breakup, but you don't want to look at yourself as to, because you are the common denominator, right? That can cause that long-term suffering because we're not really willing to lean into what that was all about. And so as a result, we just continue to repeat those same patterns. And so it ends up being a suffering, for lack of a better term, because we're not looking at it. Whereas, when you go through that, and I know when I went through my divorce, that was one of probably the toughest times, the most painful times of my life. And, I went through all the stages of grief around that. And it was really easy for me to blame my former wife at the time. Right. Because then it was like, okay, I don't have to deal with it myself. I can project that out and thinking the pain's going to go away that way. And it never did. It never did until I stopped and looked at myself. And I'm not saying it was an instantaneous thing. It definitely took me a while, but I think that there is something to be said for being comfortable in the pain, because that's what I think men don't do. They don't allow themselves to be in it. And then they go ahead and they self-medicate or they avoid. And that can be done in any way, shape, or form, right?
Yeah.
Then the other thing around that is pain can be exacerbated and the suffering by not letting go of it, right? Like continuing to have to process it and to blame it and all those things that come around. So now all of a sudden it becomes your identity, right? Yeah. That pain body, if you will, becomes your identity. And until we're able to finally release it. So it's a really delicate balance, because you have to feel it, but you don't want to be attached to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. It's something, I talk about often as possible. I call the hot tub analogy, where, it's going to be intense, but once you soak into it and you get into it, then it kind of lessens a little bit. But if you're afraid to get into that intense part initially,
right,
you're not going to feel it and you're not going to heal it and you're not going to get into it, but it definitely can be intense. And I think something we probably get into, we're getting close to first break, but something we probably get into even in the second segment is sometimes even that suffering is the fear of projected pain. Like you're talking about chop off the tail of the tiger. Like, I got this hard thing I need to do. I got to talk to my boss. I got to talk to my, kids. I got to talk to the wife. And then you push that out and you're afraid to have that conversation. You're afraid of what the outcome might be. And most of the things we're afraid of never happen. Right. Most of the things we fear never happen, but we tend to create a lot more suffering by waiting and stewing over and not accepting that I got to do this hard thing.
That's right. I would absolutely agree.
Wow. There's a hard thing we got to do right now, and we're a little bit early, but it's better than going a little bit long. We'll jump into a break here and pay some bills for radio station for everybody else, and we'll be right back here. But we are the Mad Men of Masculinity on KLDC. We'll be right back. Boom. Good stuff, man. This is pretty deep.
Yeah, I got some stuff to share about the things we worry about never happening. If you want to lead me on, I can share something.
Yeah, let's do that.
How about we don't do this, and we probably should more, but how about we come right back into just more about you and what you got going on, Nats, instead of waiting until the very end.
Absolutely.
Because I hate the last 30 seconds. Oh yeah, what do you got going on? So how about we
we'll preemptive that, then we can talk about the perceived suffering.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. We're back. We are back. Mad Men of Masculinity, KLDC, 12:20 a.m. in the Mile High City and on the interwebs everywhere. Global around here. I'm telling you, you can find us all kinds of places. I found us like on my TV. I got a Roku TV, and they got I think it's one of the apps. One of the apps is preloaded in there. And I was like, let me search it. Sure enough, man, we right on there, man. We all over the place, man, doing our thing.
Podcasts, YouTube, we be everywhere.
All of the joints, man. You can tell your ALEXA. You can tell her to find us, and she'll find us. I know I don't want to say it because she's in here listening. And she knows she'll start doing her own thing. You know how they do. But anyhow, we are talking with our guy, Chris Natzke. You might hear us call him Nats because that's just what we do, because we're just cool like that, inner circle. If we were the A-team, he would be Hannibal. Put it that way. If that makes any sense to anybody that grew up through the 80s or whatever, he would be Hannibal. He's the the smart, older, wise one in the group that tries to keep the rest of us out of trouble. I guess that would make me B.A. Baracus. But anyhow, we're talking about pain today. But before we get into that, especially with the perceived pain and all that, that's what kind of stuff you got. If I don't even have a copy of my book, man, but you happen to have written.
I got it right there, baby. Yeah.
Do you? Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That's he's on the, well, I guess it'd be the back cover, but still, my book, man. I mean, shoot, I was trying to think of who I'd want to get to say some words, and you were the guy, man. What kind of stuff you got? What are you into, man? Like, what's your world looking like? You are a professional in all of these things, speaking, coaching, I mean, martial arts, all that kind of stuff, man. What do you got going on?
Yeah, so obviously still involved in martial arts, and in fact, I'll be leaving next week for a national international black belt testing in Virginia that I'll be heading up with my instructor Bill Superfoot Wallace. So I've got that going on, continuing to speak and coach. And one of the things I've got going on, when people go to my website, you'll see I've got a new program I call the VIP Intensive. So it's the Breaking Through VIP Intensive. It basically is this. Let's say you've got a breakthrough you want in your life, and you really want to devote a day to making that happen. What are the limiting beliefs that are holding you back? What's the plan that you can put in place? What are the things that have brought you to this point, but now you're not able to get beyond that? For us to spend a good day together and really move through that and use it as a launching pad for you to continue to have breakthroughs in your life. So that's something I'm really excited about as well. Is putting that intensive together. And then, of course, I do my ongoing coaching programs, and then my speaking. And of course, Kirk, as you've seen, you could probably deliver it as well as I can at this point. Board breaking experience that I do, which is one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah. Nice. One of the lessons you learned is anybody can do a split once.
That's right. Exactly.
See, I remember that whole deal, man. I know the deal. Anyhow. Yeah, man. And whenever we do anything where I get the opportunity to intro you, man, it's one of the highlights of my day or my week, man. You're my guy. You're one of the realists, man. I appreciate you. We appreciate you and everything you are and everything you do, man. And so you bring like a depth of perspective that most people don't have, not only from life, from just, from your coaching, your business, the martial arts, to just wisdom periods, man. You got like a master's in divinity, right? Or something like that. I mean,
masters in spiritual psychology. Yep.
Spiritual survival. I mean, man, you're pretty deep, man. And so when we talk about this kind of stuff, man, you got unique perspective. And we talked when we're going into the last break, we were talking about like, what do we call it? Like perceived pain, or help me straighten out my thoughts on that.
Well, and this quote comes to me. I think it was Mark Twain that said, I've gone through many difficult times in my life, some of which actually happened.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that so much of our pain can actually happen in our minds because we're anticipating something bad occurring. And I was talking to you and Jason at break. I mean, you've heard me talk about this before, Kirk, during my board breaking experience. And this is something I have to continuously remind myself of, particularly when I'm going through tough times, is that the vast majority of the things that we worry about in our lives absolutely never happen, right? So the study I talk about is a study called The Worry Cure. It was by a man named Dr. Robert Leahy. And he brought all these people together and he said, I want you to write down in the greatest detail you can all the things you're worried about happening in the next 30 days. Problems with work, finances, health and wellness, relationships, write them all down in detail, then give them to me and go live your life for the next 30 days. If at all possible, don't make any major changes, like don't get a new job, don't get a divorce or whatever, just if you can't avoid that, but just go live your normal life, come on back in about 32, 33 days, and let's see what happened. And what they found out in all the people they studied, 85% of the things that people wrote on that list never happened. Now, what most people do is they go, yeah, but 15% did, right? But here's the beauty of it. Of that 15% that did, 79% of the time, people said either it happened and it wasn't bad as they thought it would be, or it happened and they were glad it did because they learned from it. So if you take all those numbers together, you realize that 97% of the time, the things we worry about either never happen or they're not as bad as we thought they would be. So the question is, how would you live your life differently if you knew that number to be true?
Yeah, it reminds me of the buffalo and the cow kind of analogy where, the cows, when they see the storm coming, they run from it, which invariably makes it last longer because you can't outrun the storm. But the buffaloes will actually turn towards the storm and run towards it with the theory that, running through the storm, running through it will make it last, make it over quicker. Yeah. And so I think that's kind of the philosophy a lot of guys should try to have, especially when it's something painful. Is like, just run towards it, just do it. Yeah. Just to your point, it's not going to be as bad as you think. Yeah. It's probably going to be something you're glad that happened because you're going to learn from it. And even if it's painful, it's going to be something that, makes you stronger. Right. But too many of us we're cows, we're running from things. And it's usually something that, there was a light or there was a sound. And now I'm running from this sound because I made up something in my head that I'm afraid of that doesn't even really exist.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, that fear that we have is real. I mean, it's been hardwired in our cellular memory since the time we were, our generations, because that's how people survived when they could sense danger and they were able to deal with it beforehand. The challenge is we're not living in a life of saber-toothed tigers anymore, right? Mm-hmm. But we have other types of things that we're fearful of. Yeah. And that's oftentimes that pain of anticipation is greater than pain of actually going through the situation.
Yeah, it's that mother-in-law fear.
One of the things I geek out on is videos about Navy SEALs and about going through SEALs training or SEAL training and buds and all that kind of stuff. And the reality is, to become a Navy SEAL, there are physical requirements in terms of running and pushing. There's physical fitness requirements. But really, when it boils down to it, the qualification to become a Navy SEAL is your ability to deal with pain and discomfort. Yeah. Because buds, everybody that gets into buds has passed all the physical tests to get there. They can run fast enough. They can do all the things, but it's just a matter of, can they endure the pain, for a sustained period of time, the discomfort, the cold, all those kinds of things. And so, in reality, it's our ability as men specifically to be able to withstand, endure, to sit in, to whatever you want to call it, pain. Man, that could be the make or break of who we are. But Nats, how does our fight and flight, parts of who we are kind of fall in line with the whole idea of pain? Like, where does our sympathetic nervous system come in?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and as you know, I do a lot of adrenal stress training in terms of self-defense. And as I said before, it is a defense mechanism within our bodies, within our psyches, within our brains. Mm-hmm. So basically it has to go in 3 different categories. There's flight, there's fight, and then there's freeze. Mm-hmm. And freeze is the response that most people have. And most animals in nature will have that too, because we're assessing, right? But again, where the pain continues or the suffering continues is we continuously project forward as to what the bad thing will, be that will happen. And in fact, you were talking about the SEALs. I think this comes from them, is they have a saying, embrace the suck. Mm-hmm. Suck. Mm-hmm. And the other thing too is, and I'm a huge fan of Admiral William McRaven. If you can ever read any of his books, I've read all of them. He's just a huge fan of his. And he talks about people that are going through buds, and the ones that oftentimes are able to make it through are the ones that are present and just doing the, whatever exercise they're in. They're not thinking about the end result. They're not thinking, 72 hours ahead. They're totally present in the moment, dealing with what they have to deal with. And when the next challenge comes, they deal with that. Because if you project too far ahead and you think you're going to be done, and then all of a sudden they say, yep, pick up the boat again, we're going on another 8-mile run, but you thought it was over. Now the psyche just like cracks because you're like, I don't know if I can do the pain anymore. But if you're staying present with it, you're dancing with it, if you will, I think there's a much greater chance for you to be able to deal with it.
Yeah, a lot of those guys end up bringing out just because, like you said, something happens and they're in the moment or they're not in the moment. They start thinking, can I do this for 8 weeks? Can I do this for 6 more weeks? Can I do this? Instead of, like you said, being present in the moment, just accepting this is where I'm at now. If you're just in the moment, time tends to go by much faster, and things tend to just kind of happen, and you're more able to accept it and more able to process it if you stay in the moment. But that whole mind game of, oh, how much longer? Where's the goal? What's the end? It's like being present is kind of the key to dealing with most of these things.
Well, you know, think about it. The time when you were maybe in pain, whether it was emotional pain or physical pain, most of the pain came as a result of being in the past, regretting what you had done, the guilt, the shame that came with that, or the pain that comes with projecting into the future. I don't know if I'll be able to deal with what's going to be coming my way. But if you just sat and said, how am I right now, right in this moment, as I breathe here now, how am I? I'm fine because I'm alive. And you can even take that from a standpoint of physical pain, right? What's one of the first things you're taught to do if you are in pain physically? Get into your breath. And your breath connotes being present, right? Yeah. Get into your breath, breathe into the pain. Have you ever heard that, right? Oh, yeah. You know, you got to breathe into the pain. So it's just a matter, again, of how much of that pain is actually real and how much is it perceived based on what we're projecting forward or what we're moving back toward.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to take ourselves some deep breaths and breathe ourselves into a break.
Right on.
We're the Mad Men of Masculinity. This is KLDC, and we will be right back. Boom. I like it.
Awesome. Good stuff, man. It's going by quick.
Mm-hmm. Geez, I feel bad. I don't have an initial on my name.
I know. What's up with that, man?
Yeah, man.
Well, that's just our .com, so you can put your .com in there.
I know I should have done that. Yeah.
Yeah. Change your name to your website.
Yeah.
That's the deal. Oh, man. All right. Y'all ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Mad Men of Masculinity, KLDC, 12:20 a.m., Mile High City. That's right. I'm Kirk M. Samuels. Let me see which direction I'm pointing. That is Jason B. Kendrick. And this guy over here is the man, the myth, the legend.
He's
this guy over here is, yeah. Am I on my screen? I don't know on my screen. Is it backwards?
Yeah, it's backwards.
Is it backwards?
Yeah.
Oh, it's backwards?
Yeah.
On my screen is
always backwards.
Hey, yeah, well, welcome to my world, man. Welcome to my world, man. So, yeah, so whatever direction, wherever Natzke is, he's over there. Hey, Natz, man, again, we appreciate you. You know, it just dawned on me the other day, another way to frame how long you've been doing martial arts. When you started martial arts was the last time the Knicks won the NBA championship.
There you go.
The same year, which happened to be the same year I was born. But I always say the year I was born, but just realized the other day, man, that's the same year, man, you know, that Nets started martial arts, man. We're talking about pain and all these kinds of things. And along your pain journey, Master Chris Natzke, you found yourself wearing number 55, D1 football linebacker. The Northwestern, what's their mascot? Northwestern Wildcats? Wildcats. My bad, man. Hey, man, you know, I got kicked in the head once. My bad, man. Northwestern Wildcats, number 55, linebacker, Chris Natzke. As a linebacker, your job is to inflict pain. Yeah. As a linebacker, your job is not to just sit back and wait for something to happen and to receive. Your job is to deliver the hits, right? So us as men, I mean, is it our job to wake up every day with the intention to attack the day such that, metaphorically speaking anyway, we dictate the pace of play, we dictate who, you know, what direction the pain goes in? Like, in other words, when we wake up in the morning, what should our mindset be when it comes to, you know, to today's pain journey?
Yeah. You know, I don't know as if I'd use the word attack because that seems a little bit aggressive to me, but it definitely means about leaning into it and being proactive around it. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know about you, but the times in my life when I've had the greatest amount of suffering is oftentimes when I'm avoiding something. right? I just don't want to deal with something. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to deal with it. And inevitably, like we were talking in the last segment, many times it's never as bad as I projected in my mind, right? But how many times do things get worse because I have avoided and I've let it go on too long? That could be in health. That could be in relationships. That could be in finances. That could be in career. It could be any of the, the key aspects of our life. But what's really interesting is from a football perspective, and my God, that just seems like such another world for me.
You were probably wearing leather helmets back then.
Almost. Because I graduated in 85, man. So that was the last time I had the pads on. But, and back then, at least in the Big Ten, it was not a passing league. It was basically 3 yards in a cloud of dust. So you were hitting offensive guards and fullbacks on almost every play. But the running back would say this too. If you were not moving toward the target and you were receiving the hit, it was always going to be a lot worse. You might have a great collision. And when you were playing scared or playing not to get hurt, that's generally when you were going to get hurt. Right.
Yeah.
In the flow and being aggressive and you were going for it, that's when things most of the time stayed intact. So yeah, but the thing of it, for me, not only was there physical pain, but I went through the emotional pain. So when I went to Northwestern, they had already been on the longest losing streak in major college football. Okay. They had gone 0-10-1 2 years before I got there. Then they went 0-11. It's my freshman year. In fact, my high school coach, before I signed with him, pulled me aside. He goes, "Are you sure you want to go there?" I said, "Coach, there's no way we're going to go 0-11 again." Right. So freshman year, we're playing Indiana University, and we closed the gap within 1 point. It's 21-20, and we're going for a 2-point conversion. And the quarterback rolls to the right. He throws to our fullback, and the ball glances off his fingers, and we lose the game 21-20. But you could feel the entire sideline just deflate. And what did we do? We went 0-11. And that was, for me, probably the most painful sporting experience that I ever went through. Coming from a high school winning program, being successful in high school and not dealing with this. As a freshman, I started the game against Michigan State, where the buttons that everyone wore was stop state at 38. So that was 38. And we didn't. We lost like 51-23, something like that. So it was grueling. And I remember, I think it was a couple weeks after that, went to University of Wisconsin to play at Camp Randall. And that's where that's where I grew up. So my mom and dad were there, and I just came out of the locker room after that loss and I wept. From the deepest part of myself, all this pain. In fact, one of the guys on the team came up. He was an upperclassman. He thought someone had died in the family. He's like, "Hey man, is everything okay?" I'm like, "I'm sick of this damn losing, It's so painful." Now, fast forward, third game of my sophomore year, we finally broke the streak, and we beat Northern Illinois like 34-17. And when we won the game, the students, they basically charged the field. They tore down both goalposts. They lifted them, dumped them over the side of Dyke Stadium, and then dragged them 4 or 5 miles and dumped them in Lake Michigan. So that was to see that. But and the thing of it is, now that based on our topic, with going through all that pain, that made that victory so much sweeter, right? It was just like, it's such a cathartic moment. And we went 3-8 that year, and Dennis Green was named Big Ten Coach of the Year. Imagine that. Going 3-8.
Wow.
Won a game in 3 years. So they made him Coach of the Year. So anyway, that for me, from an athletic standpoint, in terms of longevity, because it's like you're not losing a game and then you win the next week, but it goes on forever. That was really, really challenging.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like you went from that kind of athletic background into a new kind of, instead of dealing out the punishment, you're preparing others to deal out the punishment and to take it. And that was one of the things that kind of kept popping in my head when we were talking before, is that it's, Kirk's asked a question to you about how do we prepare for each day? Do we attack it? And what I was thinking, or what kind of popped in my head, was that we just need to be prepared, because as long as you're prepared and adaptable, you can handle anything. But I think a lot of men nowadays just aren't prepared to deal with the pain and the adversity that can happen, and they're so afraid of it, they run from it like a cow, instead of being like the buffalo analogy, running towards it to get it over with and just dealing with it. So in your work now, and you've been doing it so long now, I mean, you've got probably generations of students that you've been preparing to deal with adversity and pain. Like, talk a little bit about that and how you prepare, young minds and men to deal with that.
Well, one of the things Stephen Covey talks about, in the 7 habits, is the first habit of highly successful people is to be proactive, right? And so it is about, I guess you could use the term attack the day, but it is about being proactive. It's not like catching, it's moving forward. And it doesn't mean that sometimes you don't need to change your path and maybe move diagonally, or even move back a little bit and assess. But, in dealing with younger people in particular, I think that something that really resonates with me now is that many times I think that positive parenting and positive coaching and everything with youth is very, very important. And you've heard me talk about the concept of holding people capable, right? Versus accountable, which means that you see greatness in them and you hold them to that standard. At the same time, it is a very healthy thing for people, and young people in particular, to have to go through challenges. And when they want to quit, particularly as parents or teachers or coaches, is not let them do that, because there's so much value on the other side of that, right? There's so much value. Like, when you go through, like we say in martial arts, as a black belt, as a white belt, they never quit, right? And almost invariably, when I was teaching, students, and I've got over 2,000 students that have gotten their black belt with me, and the majority of them are young people, I can almost say that almost all of them at one point in time wanted to quit. But now, what's the lesson of when they transcend that, and they've met their goal, now they can apply that to other aspects of their life, right? Now, when chemistry is hard, their job is hard, their relationship is hard, now they're able to say, wow, I've got something inside of me that I can access to help me through this time. And I think that for me is the beauty of martial arts. People are not going to train in martial arts mostly like me their whole lives. But if they take those lessons that they gleaned, particularly if they got their black belt, now they can apply them to all aspects of their lives going forward.
Wow. This is resonating. I had a good friend. He since passed a few years ago. And a guy by the name of Mike Spivey, he actually played defensive back in the NFL and several years for the Raiders. And one day he and I were having a conversation about something. I don't remember what it was, but it was in relation to having your will set, your will resolved. And he said, you know what? He said, when you see that A gap open up and Christian Okoye is coming through that hole, and he said, you stick your head in there to meet him, you better have your will resolved beforehand. That's not the time to decide whether you're in or not, because it's coming. Right. And I'll never forget that, because it was just a clear message in terms of, in terms of, and I almost think, and as I live, longer every day, I almost begin to have the mentality of, having my will resolved in terms of how I'm going to meet whatever challenges show up in any particular day.
Yeah.
Well, I heard this somewhere, and I repeated it to my son when he was kind of having some challenges in his military career. So I gave him the same advice that I'd heard, and it was, when adversity happens, don't react, respond.
There you go.
And he was like, wow, all right, Dad. And I mean, I think especially in this next generation, well, for us too, I mean, our generation, but definitely for this next generation, man, just having the will resolved as adversity sets, because we're all going to get a phone call at some point that's going to rock our world.
That's right.
Whether it's from a family member, a doctor, or somebody.
Yeah.
And we just got to, be ready to get ready when it's time to, to have your ready button smash.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I think it bears repeating to talk about that distinction between reaction and response. I think, I mean, that's something that
I tell you what,
yeah.
let's we're coming up on a break here. Let's get into that, because that one, I got a feeling that's going to take us down a rabbit trail, especially in the context of pain here. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and get into this. What do y'all think, man? You know, y'all got any comments? Put your comments down in you know, down below, and let us know what you think. What's your thoughts on pain or any of the stuff that we're talking about? But while you do that, we'll be right back. Mad Men of Masculinity on KLBC. Boom. Yeah, that's a great that's a great path to go down. So often we get in trouble or almost cause ourselves pain by reacting.
Yeah, it's a huge lesson, especially for men, to learn to respond versus react. Like Chris said, you got to take that breath, take a second, then respond.
All right, let's keep plowing. This is it, right? This is the last one.
Last one already.
Here we go. Wow, that's quick. All right, here we go. This is it, fourth quarter time. Fourth quarter time. Put up your fours. You know, if you are a linebacker, you know, it is time to shut them down. Time to close them out. Fourth quarter here. Mad Men of Masculinity, KLDC. Got our guy Chris Natzke on. Man, we're just talking about pain. We're talking about all kinds of stuff, but all of it relating around kind of the same thing. And right before we went into the break, we started talking about the whole concept of reacting versus responding. And Chris, you had a thought on that.
Yeah, in fact, I was just thinking back several years ago. I was asked to do a keynote address for a graduation for a how can I put this? It was high schoolers, at-risk high schoolers. So these kids were they were incarcerated as part of their high school, and they were doing their graduation. And I'm not remembering all of them, but I created a talk called something about the three abilities, right? The three abilities of leadership, or something like this. And what I said is one of the key ones was response ability, the ability to respond versus react. Because I surmised that many of those guys were in the situations they were in is because they had something confront them and they reacted, and they reacted poorly. They reacted with poor choices. But had they maybe stepped back a little bit, prepared themselves in advance, maybe of if this happens, this is how I'm going to respond, or maybe just took some time and responded responsibly, right? Now all of a sudden their life would have taken a totally different turn. And think about that in our relationships, think about that in our finances, in our jobs, in our health and wellness. I mean, how many times are we just reacting? And reacting oftentimes can also become habitual. So we do the things that we've always done because we've always done them. And then we expect a different result. And I think it was Einstein that said that's what insanity is. That's the definition of insanity, right? So, you know, how many times in our lives when we're dealing with pain, are we stepping back, getting into our breath, you know, just evaluating where we're at before we take a move and responding versus reacting in pain? Because I know about you, times that I've reacted and maybe I've said something it usually never ends well, right? You know, particularly in relationships. What did you say? Right? Whereas if we learn to respond, and it's not always going to happen that way, but it just allows us to be in our power. And we're choiceful then with the steps we take and the languaging that we use. We're in our power. We're not giving our power away. We're remaining in our power when we're responding.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that we as men, especially as we get older, have to learn. And a lot of us learn it the hard way, but we tend to, if we grasp onto the idea of depth of vision, like if you stop for a second and take a breath and think this through, that reaction is not a good idea. Fighting this guy over a parking spot is not a good idea. It's not going to end well. Yelling at your woman because you're in a bad mood, it's probably not going to end well. It's not a good idea. I mean, I saw a comedian talk about this, and it's kind of funny, but it relates to a lot of the relationship pain. You know, he said he asked his grandfather or uncle, whoever it was, had been married for 50 years. He's like, "How'd you stay married? How'd you make your marriage work?" He says, "I never said the first two things that came to mind."
That's right.
I always said the third thing.
That's right. I've heard
First
that.
one gets you divorced, the second one gets you on the couch, but the third one is a happy marriage.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah,
That's
I
worth
just
to think
think,
about.
yeah, sure, and surely, over the course of my life, man, I tell you what, I mean, I have caused myself so much pain by just reacting,
Yeah.
by reacting to something, and not even, I'm not generally speaking, like a violent person or anything like that. I mean, I'll scrap if I got to scrap. I'm not necessarily afraid of that, but I'm normally not going to be the aggressor in a situation, you know. And so it's not normally like that, but it's just stupid stuff. I feel this way, so I want to just react to that, or I don't know, just dumb things that end up causing me a whole lot of pain in life because because I reacted. Some chick thought I was good looking and wanted to, offer it up, and I said sure. And next thing you know, $250,000 later in child support. I mean, it is what it is. So.
Yeah.
But just the whole idea of reacting, man. I just I've gotten myself into so many situations that I've experienced so much pain just because I didn't have the ability to breathe through the moment, to stop, to think, and to make the right choice to avoid someplace I didn't want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess a continuation of that thought, Kirk, is just popped in my mind is we're all going to have situations where we react. We're going to have situations where we totally screw it up, right? The other thing that is really important about dealing with pain is being able to forgive ourselves, right? And forgiveness from a standpoint of, and also other people, but even if you think about, if you're saying you're forgiving someone else, you're really forgiving the judgment that you're making about that person. So it becomes self-forgiveness, if you will. And that for me at times has been the hardest thing for me to do, is to, look at it and forgive myself for that situation, what I did to create that situation, the part that I played in that. Because it's easy to project that onto someone else and then, oh, I'll forgive you. And now it's almost like, you're the high and mighty person doing the forgiveness. But when you look at it and say, okay, what did I do to create, promote, or allow this to happen in my life? And where do I need to take responsibility for that? Oh, that's going to require some forgiveness. And that is where real pain can sometimes surface, because we're our greatest judges.
Yeah, there's something that I coached a couple guys on, and something and it's like, you teach best what you most need to understand. I have to remind myself constantly because of my perfectionistic mindset, but we're always doing the best we can in each moment. When we know better, we do better. And the only way to really know better is to, like to your point, is to think about it and forgive.
Yeah.
Forgive ourselves for that and realize that was the best I could do in that moment. I'm stressed out. I haven't had good sleep, what I'm hungry, I'm hangry, whatever. So that's the best I could do in that moment.
Yeah.
But if I can
and then and from a practical standpoint, it's to forgive yourself, but then also commit to not repeating those patterns, right? Oh, I screwed up, I'm going to forgive myself. I screwed up. Well, yes, but part of our growth is, it's learning, upliftment, and growth every time we have a situation like that. And now that's how we ascend as human beings, right? It's we learn from those mistakes that we've made. We forgive ourselves for that, but then we do everything we can do not to repeat that pattern, because that's part of our growth. That's the
whole idea. That's the whole idea of repentance, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about what do you guys think about sharing pain? I mean, I know we're kind of lining up on the runway a little bit here, but the idea of sharing pain, and where I'm getting at is, generally speaking, men don't like to share when they're going through something. Men don't like to share when they're going through pain, and we like to just kind of shut down and go inside and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, men just generally don't tend to like to do that. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I'll tell you what, I think I've evolved a lot in this area. I think early in my life, that was the last thing I was ever going to do, is show that I was in pain, because I needed to have a persona. I'm the advanced black belt, I'm the champion, I'm the tough guy, et cetera, et cetera. But the more and more I found, and a lot of that has to do like with the work that we all do together, right? As we come together, and if there's legitimate pain, I'm not talking about bitching. You know what I mean? Because that can be something that's like, okay, man, you got to get over it. We got to move on. But if you're in authentic pain, number one, what it does is it's a cathartic way for us to be able to release it ourselves. But it also gives other people permission to be vulnerable as well. So if, particularly if someone is looking at you like, wow, I never realized you're going through that. Wow, that gives me the permission to be able to share that. And that's where we grow. That's where we grow, because, most of the time that pain that we repress, is going to come out in some way, shape, or form, right? It's either going to manifest in our bodies as illness or disease, or it's going to come out most of the time projecting onto someone else, particularly those that are closest to us, our wives, our partners, our kids. And now, what's the healthiness about that? And we end up being in pain that we're holding it back, but then it just comes blasting out because we haven't released the pressure. So I think sharing pain is a super powerful thing. And that's why the men's work that we all do is so important. To be able to know that it's a safe space for me to be able, if I've got an issue that I deal with, I can go to my brothers and say, hey man, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm at. I need some help. I think that I had a coach tell me one time that 100% strength comes from 100% vulnerability.
Yeah. Well, I put it in the comments for all you folks, because the three of us, if you like this conversation, if you like listening to Natzke wax on poetically about pain and martial arts and football and concussions and everything else, we're all on the B-Men board. bmen.org is how you find us. And coming up in October, we have our next B-Men Summit, which will be an amazing opportunity to come in and, to that exact point, share, to learn, to grow, and to create a community. And we're all about the community. I mean, none of us would be here if it wasn't for the other guy sitting over there. Right. If we didn't have guys to share with, none of us would be here. And so we want to give you, encourage you, check out bmen.org. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. It's all about men's work. It's all about empowering men. And it's just about coming together to be better men together.
Yeah, we're all going to experience ups and downs in life, and we're all going to experience good days and bad days. We're all going to experience joy, and we're all going to experience pain. That's not being pessimistic. That's not being negative. Let's just be real, right? Let's just freaking be real as guys. Like, it's just going to happen. And when it does, what are you going to do about it? That's right. I think if nothing else, landing on the idea that, having a plan for when that happens. A lot of men are in pain and they don't have a plan. And when life and the walls of life begin to collapse around them, and you don't have a plan, whether it's, and granted, this is still Men's Mental Health Month, a plan for talking with somebody, a plan for reaching out, a plan for brotherhood and fellowship in your life, man. That pain is lonely and it's isolating. And I think too many men tap out because we don't have a plan for pain. And when you can live life amongst and with other men to fight the battles of life with, that's probably the best plan you can have, man. And I tell you, I said it the other day when you guys were letting me just go off the deep end while we were together. But, I don't know what I would do without good men in my life, man. And so I appreciate you guys helping me deal with my pain.
Right on. Same here, buddy. Same here.
So any last words of wisdom from Grand Master Chris Natzke before we head off into the sunset, as it were?
Well, I would just say that know that you're not alone, men that are out there listening when you're going through pain. And, that quip about pain and suffering, sometimes I can see maybe a little bit, unfeeling, but understand that suffering that you're going through, take the time to really evaluate if what you're currently doing is working, right? If you're suppressing it, if you're not talking to someone, if you're not dealing with it, right, and facing, and it's causing that ongoing suffering, if you will, reach out. There are plenty of men out there. And our group, of course, is a great way to do that, but you're not alone. There is light on the other side of this. And if you really take it on, if you really lean into it, it can be one of the greatest lessons in your life and greatest gifts that you can have, even though sometimes it's hell going through. And the man that you become on the other side can be that much more amazing.
Mic drop, chef's kiss. Good stuff there, Nats, man. Thank you so much for being on. Appreciate you. What's your website again? ChrisNatzke.com?
ChrisNatzke.com. So if you take
How did I know that, man?
Squish it together with the .com, and there you go. Yeah.
How did I know that? Fantastic, man. Love your brother. Love you, JBK. That's Jason B. Kendrick. I'm Kirk M. Samuels. We are the Mad Men of Masculinity. And until next time, we are out.